In the year 602 CE, a Persian king killed his most loyal Arab vassal, by some accounts at the feet of his elephants. Within 40 years, his empire no longer existed. 2 centuries of silence. Episode 2, The Desert Lords. The same year that the Persian king ordered his vassal's death, 800 miles to the west, a soldier in Constantinople was leading a mutiny that would end in the murder of the Byzantine emperor and the elevation of an illiterate centurion to the imperial throne. In Rome, an old man named Gregory was finishing the reforms that would shape the medieval Western Church for 1,000 years. In China, the new Sui dynasty had just rebuilt the canals that joined the Yellow and the Yangtze, and was about to fall to the dynasty that produced Tang poetry. That is the year. The Persian Empire, the Sassanid Empire, sat between these worlds. Its capital, Ctesiphon, on the banks of the Tigris, held 500,000 people. Its great vaulted audience hall, Tag Khosrow, rose 40 meters above the plain, the largest single-span brick arch ever built in the ancient world. Its king sat behind curtains of silk and gold, elevated so high above his visitors that some ambassadors had to be told the king was actually in the room. Roman emperors trembled at his gates. Arab tribal chiefs came to his court as suppliants. They bowed, they brought gifts, they received gifts, they went home. Zarrinkoob writes the opening of his chapter with quiet irony.
In those days, not even the wildest mind could have entertained the thought that these nameless, barefoot people of the desert would one day hold the crown of these famous Persians in their hands.
The Arabian Peninsula in the year 600 was, to the Persian court, a wasteland beneath its notice. A furnace of sand and rock that stretched for thousands of miles, broken by oases, a thin mountain range in the south, a few trading towns perched nervously on caravan routes. The people who lived there were the Bedouin, nomads organized into tribes, moving with their camels from water source to water source, raiding their neighbors when resources ran short. They had no cities, no written law, no organized state. What they had was an extraordinary oral culture, poetry composed and memorized and recited around fires, and a code of honor called muruwa that valued courage, generosity, and above all, vengeance. This was not a civilization that anyone in the Persian court was watching nervously. The Persian court was watching the corruption inside its own palace. But the relationship between Iran and the Arabs was not simply contemptuous indifference. It was managed, carefully, strategically, through a chain of client states that served as buffers between the empire and the desert. The most important was a city called Hira. Hira sat at the edge of the Iraqi desert, on the western bank of the Euphrates, near where the city of Kufa stands today. By the 6th century, it had become a real city. Palaces, Christian churches, a court, a literate class, poets who competed for patronage, merchants who traded in both directions. The dust of the desert blew through its streets, but inside the palace walls, you could almost forget you were at the edge of the world. Its ruling dynasty, the Lakhmids, were Arab in blood, but Persian in everything else. They governed at the pleasure of the Sassanid kings, their appointment confirmed by royal decree from Ctesiphon. In exchange, they managed the Arab frontier, keeping the raiding tribes in check, absorbing the energy of the desert before it could reach the empire's heartland, fighting Iran's proxy wars against Byzantium's own Arab client state on the Syrian border. It was an elegant arrangement. It had worked for 300 years. The Lakhmids produced remarkable figures. One early king was trusted so completely by his Sassanid overlord that the Persian king sent his own son to be raised at the Hira court. That boy grew up riding horses through the desert borderlands, hunting lions, learning Arabic alongside Persian, absorbing the wild freedom of the steppe. He came back to Ctesiphon and became Bahram Gur, Bahram the wild ass, one of the most beloved figures in all of Persian legend. Persian poets would write about him for 1,000 years. A century later, the most formidable of the Lakhmid kings reigned through the long years of Anushirvan, held the desert tribes together through the chaos of the Mazdakite revolution, raided so deep into Byzantine territory that Constantinople complained to Ctesiphon. At its height under him, Hira was a place where Arab and Persian culture genuinely mixed, where you could hear Pahlavi spoken in the palace and Arabic sung at the market on the same afternoon. After him, several other kings ruled, until finally, the throne of Hira passed to a man named Nu'man. His name is Nu'man ibn Mundhir. He has been educated at the Sassanid court. He dresses like the Persian nobility, replicates their ceremonies, builds in their architectural style. He has reigned in Hira for 40 years. He is, by every measure his neighbors use, a competent ruler. He is also a man who repays loyalty with betrayal. At the Sassanid court, there is a poet and administrator named Adi ibn Zayd. He is Arab by blood, but has grown up immersed in Persian court culture. Fluent in both languages, trusted by both sides, exactly the kind of bridge figure that holds the whole Lakhmid system together. It was Adi who lobbied on Nu'man's behalf years ago. It was Adi who used his connections in Ctesiphon to secure Nu'man the governorship of Hira. Adi is Nu'man's patron, his advocate, his friend. Nu'man has him arrested. The charges are fabricated. The real reason, as far as the chronicles can reconstruct it, is the ordinary poison of power. Fear of a man who knows too much, envy of a man too well connected. Adi ibn Zayd is in his cell now. He knows there will be no trial. He knows Nu'man will not relent. He has spent a lifetime moving between two languages, two courts, two ways of seeing the world. He had thought that this gave him a kind of safety, that someone who could speak in both directions could not be silenced from either. He had been wrong about that. He had been wrong about Nu'man. He thinks of his son. He hopes the boy has the patience that he himself lacked. He dies in the prison. The son's name is Zayd. Zayd does not rage. He does not immediately seek revenge. He does something much more dangerous. He waits. He cultivates a new friendship with Nu'man. He performs forgiveness. He asks only to be sent to the Sassanid court at Ctesiphon to serve, as his father had served, as a translator and intermediary. Nu'man, who apparently does not grasp what he has set in motion, agrees. At the court of Khosrow Parviz, Zayd waits again. Months, perhaps longer, until the moment comes. It comes through a marriage negotiation. Khosrow Parviz is arranging a match for someone in the royal household. He wants a noblewoman from a specific family. The chronicles do not fully explain the maneuvering. What they record is that Zayd makes sure the king understands that Nu'man has refused the request, that he has, in effect, rebuffed the Shahanshah's desire. Whether this is entirely true, partially true, or strategically amplified, we do not know. What we know is that Khosrow Parviz believes it. Khosrow Parviz summons Nu'man to court. Nu'man comes. He walks into the same palace where his father and grandfather had served, through the same gates, past the same guards. He may have hoped to explain himself. He may have brought gifts. He may have believed that the relationship between Hira and Ctesiphon, 3 centuries old, would protect him. It did not. Zarrinkoob records the disagreement among the chronicles.
Khosrow grew angry and ordered him bound and threw him at the feet of the elephants. according to one account, threw him in prison until he died.
The chroniclers cannot agree on the method. They agree on the outcome. Nu'man ibn Mundhir, last king of Hira, did not leave the palace alive. What happened next is the hinge on which this entire story turns. Khosrow Parviz, having destroyed the Lakhmid king, decided he no longer needed the Lakhmid arrangement at all. He abolished it. He would govern Hira through his own Persian appointees. No more Arab intermediaries. No more buffer dynasty. Direct Persian administration right up to the edge of the desert. The Arab tribes that the Lakhmids had managed for 300 years, bound by obligation, by custom, by the intricate web of relationships that Nu'man's family had woven across generations, suddenly had no one to answer to. The compact was gone. The frontier was open. Zarrinkoob records this without drama. He simply notes what followed. Within a generation, the armies of Islam came through exactly this gap. The Persian Empire had not been weakened by an external enemy. It had dismantled its own first line of defense because a proud king could not tolerate a subordinate who had embarrassed him. This is the man at the elephants. This is the 40 years. Zarrinkoob ends his chapter not with the desert. He ends it with the empire itself. More than 1100 years before this moment, a Persian king named Cyrus had taken Babylon without battle and inscribed onto a clay cylinder what later generations would call the world's first declaration of human rights. That captives be freed, that displaced peoples be allowed to return to their homelands, that no temple be defaced for the god a man chose to honor. The Sassanid Empire was the third successor to the kingdom Cyrus founded. By the year 600 CE, that long inheritance had turned to dust at the lip of the throne room. The Sassanid state, despite all the splendor and visible greatness, was rapidly sliding into wretchedness and disorder. The army was rebellious. The clergy was corrupt. Discord and disagreement in beliefs and ideas had spread among the Magi. The Magi were drowning in deception and bribery. Mazdak's revolt and the long rivalries that followed had broken the social contract. Anushirvan's harsh wisdom, paired with his ruthlessness, had rooted out injustice, but had failed to break the cycle. After him came his short-lived son, then Khosrow Parviz, who took titanic victories against Byzantium, but never managed to organize the affairs of the kingdom. His wars produced no result except to drain the treasury. When Khosrow Parviz was finally murdered by his own son, 8 or 10 generals usurped the throne in 3 years. Each ruled for a few weeks. Each was killed or deposed. By the time the last Sassanid heir, Yazdgird III, took the throne, he was a child, inheriting a kingdom that had stopped functioning. Zarrinkoob's closing line of the chapter:
This kingdom had reached the lip of the abyss of destruction, and one blow was enough to turn its affairs to a storm of events.
The Arabs delivered the blow. They did not bring down a healthy empire. They delivered the final blow to one already dying. That fact is what makes the question of these 2 centuries hard. If you stand inside the progressive, democratic tradition of Iranian thought, the tradition that asks what the conquest tells us about why empires fall, this chapter does not let you off easily. The Sassanid Empire was not destroyed because its enemies were strong. It was destroyed because it had hollowed itself out from inside. The arrogance of a single king destroyed 3 centuries of careful frontier management. The army was not loyal. The clergy was not believed. The peasants who paid the taxes did not, when the moment came, fight for the kingdom that had taxed them. The question this tradition has to sit with is, when an empire treats its own buffer dynasties as instruments instead of partners, when its strategic depth depends on relationships its rulers do not honor, when its military reach exceeds its civic legitimacy. What stops the same dynamic from playing out under any flag? If you stand inside the nationalist, civilizational tradition of Iranian thought, the tradition that holds the pre-Islamic Iran as a civilization of agency, peer to Rome, projecting power, taken seriously by the world, this chapter speaks to you with extraordinary force. Zarrinkoob does not idealize the Sassanid court. He is clear-eyed about its arrogance, its cruelty, its strategic short-sightedness. But the empire he describes is unambiguously a civilization. The question this tradition has to sit with is, the Sassanids' problem was not insufficient pride. It was strategic arrogance, the assumption that 3 centuries of successful arrangement meant the arrangement would maintain itself without care. When the next Iran sees itself standing again at the height of its civilization, what prevents the same arrogance from reasserting itself under a different name? These 2 questions sit on the table. This series will not answer them. In the next episode, the same chapter, but a different story. An old man from Yemen has been waiting for 10 years at Anushirvan's court. An 80-year-old general is given 800 soldiers and 8 ships. And on a beach in Aden, the ships are set on fire. 2 Centuries of Silence, Episode 2, The Desert Lords.